Hi, I'm Kevin Gillis, and we're back inside right now. It's still cold outside, but nice and toasty in here. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the artwork in the Raccoons and just kind of explain a few things to you. This is Melissa Raccoon, who you probably remember. And when the designers or the animators, and in this particular case, Paul Shibley, the animation director, did these, he would do the original shapes in blue until they got down to where they were really happy with something. And there are different notes that are put on top of the character design here, like she's 2 2/3 heads high. Her eyes are halfway usually, and she's got a colored pupil that rings around her iris. So that's kind of important as well. You probably notice it when you see close-ups of her on the Raccoons. But you'll see here, because the blue doesn't pick up the camera, they can play around with it a bit. When it actually goes further down, you start to see the shading in of how the tail is going to look. You can see her smile in here. You can see her eyes a lot more. The bushiness of the tail, small hands and feet. She's got very small hands and feet. And I don't even know what size of shoe she wears, but we'll have to figure that one out. And this is one from way back. This is from Tommy, who was Ranger Dan's son, and named after both my youngest brother and my dad. My dad's name was Tom, and my little brother was named Tommy. Actually, we called him Tom Tom. I've got a couple more here I wanted to show you. And Cyril Sneer, everybody wants to know about Cyril Sneer. Well, this is kind of, you can see the cutaways that are being, how the shape is coming about and how it's gonna fall in the line. And this is before, obviously, it gets finalized. But you can see how it's actually meant also for the animators when they're doing their scenes as a guide. Speaking of Cyril, I've got some expression sheets here. And I'm pretty sure these were done by Paul Shibley, the animation director, as well. Paul used to love to try to grab an expression from a character and just make it work. So try different things. And you can see Cyril going into his laugh here, and here he's getting kind of didactic, probably with Cedric of the Pigs. I knew you wouldn't want to leave without seeing Bert Raccoon. And these are expression sheets from Bert. They've got some posing in them. That's probably his most famous look, or when he's getting caught up on something. I can just read you a little bit here of Bert from a sizing point of view, how we would deal with this. So the model sheets would actually say, flare the neck out slightly at the collar. Well, you can see that here at the collar. It just starts to flare back out here. Longish fingers. Yes, Bert had longish fingers, usually stuck in the peanut butter jar. Avoid the profile and the head, or a head-on, sorry, for the lip sync, because it's much more difficult if you're actually looking right at the camera to get the lip sync than it is if you're slightly off to the side. One of my favorite lines is actually, I noticed it in the pig lines this morning, was flatten the crotch line. I have no idea what that means, but I'll show you. That is a flattened crotch line. And these are the pigs. They're a standard size, round eyes, larger than standard. Flatten the crotch line again. Avoid the head-on for lip sync. And also the mouth off to the side for head-on. So I'd like to show you a bit of a kind of an anomaly here. Everybody knows this is Cyril Sneer. And if you look very closely, I'm going to show you the background. Now the background is not just painted with watercolors, it also has what they call cross-hatching, which is ink work all the way around. It gives a bit more texture than just a clear, watercolor. It tends to stylize it. You can see all the little ink work, almost like the old comic books were done. Graphic novels, a lot of ink work, a lot of detail, tremendous amount of detail. I mean, even Cyril's projector here, his projection screen, has like a little character who's been built in there. And of course, and by the way, used for fun, that was the name of a scene. It wasn't meant for us to go out and do, just have fun with this. I'm going to come back to Cyril here in a second, but in the meantime, let me show you. You can see it more on the album of the Raccoons. This is a scene and how the detail comes out. It's from the lumber mill, but look at the detail in here. So if this was all watercolor, you'd certainly have a lot of detail, but nowhere near what you can do with the ink lines. And it was a look that we really liked, and it was the first look for the Raccoons. It was done in both the Christmas Raccoons and the Raccoons on Ice special. We went on to the Raccoons and the Lost Star. And this was a scene from the Raccoons and the Lost Star. And I'm going to take the cell out of this for a second to show you the difference, where we used only watercolors. There's no ink work at all. All the detail is now done with watercolors. The highlights on the mountain, the stars, sparkling, and the detail is still there, but it leaves a little bit more to the imagination, which I think was really important that we do that. This is one of my favorite scenes. It's Cyril Sneer laughing over some big deal he's done. Again, let's go to the background. You can see tons of detail, but without the ink line. Detail, like even the rivets up on his chair, they've got like little reflections in them. Look at the lights up here. They're whited out because they're so bright. My mom and dad used to get these wines from Italy that had baskets around them, and then we would get the baskets, take the baskets off and use them as candles. I'll come back to that in a second. Just to take a look very carefully at the cell here. The cell has not just got what we call the background painted, but this is on top of the cell. We have to be very careful we don't touch that because that can be scratched very easily. And last but not least, there's Brew and Sophia Tutu in the forest. And we'll take that cell away and we can see the detail all done by watercolor and by brush. No ink whatsoever. All the highlights in the fronds, the lighting highlights in the background here, the shadowing all done in here. Lots of detail, but no ink line. So now we're going to go to what I wanted to tell you about the cells. Take a look which cell we want to go to here. Let me start with this one here. So this is the cell with the foreground top cell work. You'll see that the match strike has got all sorts of almost like particles coming off of it. There's the yellow particles and then there's the airbrushed. All the red around there is airbrushed. So you can see the explosion of the match. You can see the smoke coming off of it. You can see the highlights of the sparks going out. That's all on top of the cell, because behind the cell, big surprise, we paint ourselves on the back. We paint ourselves from the back. And the reason we do that is so that the colors don't overlap the ink line of the character. So you've got an ink line here between Cyril's jowls and his neckerchief that must be absolutely perfectly protected. And in order to do that, the painters, they are called opaquers actually, and we had an incredible team of them in Ottawa. They would paint backwards. Every cell was painted backwards and then checked to make sure that there was no overlap one way or the other on the front. I can show you one here that's kind of fun. They're in the airplane, they're escaping here. And when we animate, we actually animate the background moving because the cell doesn't move, the cell stays the same and the background moves, and that's how you get the motion. But when you look on the back, you can see all the detail of how the opaquer would have to work. And occasionally they'd make a mistake. And if it was off the camera area, we didn't care. You can see the red there is overlapping, or the black didn't get overlapped. And therefore, but because it was off the camera direction, it wasn't fixed. It didn't need to be. So we'll see you next time, and we're going to talk a little bit about scripts, and we're going to talk about storyboards, which are really fabulous comics with all the detail of how a scene is going to look, and the characters and the movement of what the camera is going to do. It's all there in the storyboard. I think you'll be quite interested in seeing it. And I guess last but not least, keep on raccooning. Great to see you. Thanks.